Before you watch this episode of our cityCURRENT radio show, I want to invite you to join cityCURRENT's e-learning and online personal development platform called GrowthCurrent. I'm Jeremy Park, host of the cityCURRENT radio show and CEO of cityCURRENT. GrowthCurrent is your exclusive ticket to attend virtual events with global thought leaders, national guest speakers, and experts who can help you grow personally and professionally. It gives you access to success secrets, lessons learned, learning modules, and so much more. Being online, you can join us from anywhere in the world. Subscriptions are only $8 a month, or you can do bulk subscriptions for your team. Check out growthcurrent.com to learn more and to join us in our efforts to power the good. And now, on to the show. Welcome to the cityCURRENT radio show. I'm your host, Jeremy Park. We're always honored to bring you inspiring stories of individuals and organizations making a difference, powering the good. And we're going to kick it off talking about musicians on call. We are joined by their president and CEO, Pete Griffin. How are you doing, Pete?
I'm doing great, Jeremy. Thanks so much for having me on today.
So we love you all. You do so much good, and technology is a big part of what we're going to talk about in terms of using your musicians and gifts to be able to make a difference. But let's start with a little backstory. Give us some history for Musicians on Call.
Yeah, Musicians on Call is a national nonprofit. We started 21 years ago. And what we do is we bring live and recorded music to the bedsides of patients in healthcare facilities all across the country. We play for everyone from children to adults to veterans. And pre-pandemic, we did that mostly by going room to room and having musicians perform at patients' bedsides. And that could have been anyone from local songwriters and professional musicians all the way up to, Blake Shelton and Bruce Springsteen and Kelly Clarkson and a lot of these big names that you hear on the radio and see on TV.
And you have a chance, when you talk about the musicians that are on tour and these big names, the top sellers, the platinum artists, the platinum recording artists, in many cases, we see them on TV, but to your point, you get to see them actually humbly go in and serve, not seeking the limelight, but doing it for all the right reasons. Share a little of just kind of that behind the curtain side of these musicians and their heart for using their music and their gifts to be able to really make a difference.
Yeah, it is interesting because when we work with all these artists, you really do get to see a very personal side of them. Because let me tell you, when you're in a hospital room, there's no cameras, there's no limelight, there's no press, there's no audience. You're literally just sitting there one-on-one with someone who's likely going through the worst day of their life. Quite literally. I mean, these are people that are battling cancer or maybe a significant injury, and they're really scared and in pain and worried and all those things. So when you get down to it, I mean, it's a very intimate moment. And what I've seen from some of these big artists is that it really brings them back to why they got into music and why, and really who they are. I remember when we went around with Keith Urban not too long ago, he was saying, he gets to play all these amazing stadiums and arena shows, but there's nothing better for him than to play one-on-one for a patient to really get back to what it was all about. And, the same thing with Kelly Clarkson. I was actually talking to her recently, and she usually does some stuff with us during the holidays. And she does it without any fanfare. I mean, she'll go to like Vanderbilt Children's Hospital with us, and she'll literally perform a concert in a conference room for a bunch of the patients there. And then she'll go room to room to sit there and meet every single kid that she didn't talk to or wasn't able to come down to the concert in the lobby. And that's something you just don't hear about. It's not something they publicize, but they do it just because it's in their heart, and they really believe in the healing power of music.
Yeah, and I think that's just a really cool side of what you do, is that intimacy that's created and that chance for you to get to know not only their heart and story, but how really much of an impact it can make for those that you're able to bless in this way. Give me one, and you don't have to name names necessarily, but give me one thing that has kind of surprised you, obviously in a good way, in terms of something that you found out about one of the artists. And it could be someone that we know or not, but that as they're sharing with the patients, something that you're like, wow, I had no idea. That's really powerful. What's something that you've kind of seen unfold?
Well, like all of us, what you find out when you're in the hospital is that there's a lot of artists that we hear on the radio and see on TV. that have either gone through themselves or have family members that have gone through similar situations to what they're seeing in the hospital. And I think that's one of the things that makes it so personal for everybody, is that, we can all of us can relate to having a loved one or someone we care about being sick or injured. And we also can all relate to the fact that music helps us through tough situations. We use music in times we want to celebrate and create good memories. And we also use music, in the car when we're having a stressful day, or as a way to kind of escape in our beds. And, these musicians and the patients that we play for are no different. And so I think that they just really appreciate being able to help out in those moments, because whether it's through their music or someone else's, they know that music can get us through some really tough times. And that's one of the reasons I think a lot of these musicians volunteer with us year after year, is because they know how impactful it is and how important it is. And once you experience that, you just want to keep doing it.
Absolutely. So you mentioned normally this would be in person and going room to room and being very intimate. Now with technology, and obviously because of the pandemic, you're doing things a little different. So talk about the way you're doing it now, which is really allowing you to reach even more people and make an even greater impact.
Yeah, that's totally right. In March, when all of this really started to come down hard, we had to shut down all of our in-person programs in hospitals, which was basically, 99% of what we do. Now, the good news for us is that for years now, we've been also offering to hospitals and healthcare facilities virtual programs where we would connect live music to patients throughout the country. And so what we had to do was really quickly pivot and start doing that with all of our energy, because, not only do we know that in-person wasn't going to happen, but we also knew that it's going to be a long time before they start letting, people into hospitals without a COVID vaccine, for example. And so we really invested all of our time and energy into virtual programs. And like you said, we've been actually playing for more people every month after the pandemic started than we were before. We're playing for over 10,000 people a month now. And we're doing everything from playing, one-on-one with musicians, playing to patients on tablets, to, having performances that are beamed into each and every hospital room within the hospital, to concerts where we're literally reaching thousands of people in multiple hospitals at the same time. So we've really kind of taken this, throw the kitchen sink at it approach to figure out how we can reach people virtually. But I can tell you that it has been so impactful and really needed now more than ever, I think, with everything going on in the pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like we need music more than ever just to get us through. Share a little bit of behind the scenes, the logistics of pulling these pieces together, because there's a lot of moving parts in terms of getting the musician and syncing that, and then obviously the hospital or the individual patient. So there's a lot of playing Tetris, so to speak, with the logistics. Walk us through how that works.
Yeah, well, the good news for us is having worked with hospitals around the country for 21 years, they know us and they trust us. And then also because we had a lot of this infrastructure already set up and we're working with hospitals that had that technology as well, there was a level of comfort. So when we had to transition, it really was a bit easier for us than if we were trying to start this fresh because of all that experience. Now, when we're doing this, we're very mindful. Number one is that the caregivers are undergoing a lot of stress right now because they're not only doing their normal jobs, but now they're part of this COVID response. So they're really doing double duty on top of all these new restrictions with the PPE they have to wear and everything else. So we didn't want to do anything that was burdensome to hospitals. We wanted to make sure it was easy. So we worked with the hospitals that were able to work with us easily and had the technology to do so. Then we would reach out to, artist supporters who wanted to do virtual programs. And the good news for us is that it was actually a lot easier working with these artists because, everyone was home. Everyone was in their living rooms and they didn't have to commit to a couple hours of driving to a hospital and going room to room in person, but we could do that all virtually from their homes. And then at that point, our incredible team here at Musicians on Call would just set up these Zooms where, depending upon what we could do with that hospital or a number of hospitals we were working with, would connect these artists to Zooms. And I can tell you that going into it, knowing how impactful our in-person programs were, I was a little nervous that, maybe this virtual program wasn't going to be as impactful as the in-person. And while nothing can replace the in-person programs, the truth is these virtual programs have been unbelievable. And I think that's a lot of it has to do with the fact that there's so much stress and isolation because of the pandemic. So if you're a kid battling cancer right now, you're not only dealing with that stress, but you're dealing with the fact that in many cases, only one parent is able to visit you at a time. And your siblings may not be able to visit you. Your friends and extended family may not be able to visit you. So you're dealing with all that on top of already a tough situation. And so people need that release and that healing and that entertainment more than ever. And I think that's one of the reasons the program has done so well during this pandemic.
I mean, I agree 100%. I've got to believe that this is something that even when things normalize and you are able to get back in person, I believe that this digital way, this virtual opportunity is here to stay. And I feel like this is going to be a major piece of what you do moving forward. What's something that you think going through this, and this may be it, but is ultimately going to make you stronger as an organization, something that you've learned through the pandemic that you think is going to put you in a better spot coming out of it?
Well, you're totally right. And I think what we've learned is that, we can use these virtual programs to really reach more people than we ever anticipated. Our plan has always been, and it's something we've been working on for a couple of years, of investing in technology so that we could really automate the processes that we do and allow hospitals and musicians and volunteers to connect directly using technology. So that's always been in the plans, but really, phase one of that was going to be, let's use that technology to schedule more and more in-person visits. And then later down the line, let's add a virtual component to it to reach others. Now it's kind of reversed, and we're going to be building out this technology to allow more virtual programs to happen. And then once our in-person is ready to happen again, and once hospitals are ready for us to come back, we're going to have that technology built so that we can even reach more people in person than ever before. So in many ways, it's, there's a lot of silver lining to what we've been forced to do in 2020. And ultimately, it's going to allow us to reach more people than ever before. And I think we're all really excited about that.
How do we help? How does the community help your efforts?
Well, right now, I think, we obviously are hurting fundraising wise. We need as much support as we can get. I think one of the challenges we face is that, we don't fit kind of square in the middle of what people think of when they think of supporting healthcare or supporting music initiatives. If you're supporting healthcare, you might support a cancer society or research or something like that, which is awesome. If you're supporting music, you might think of music education or donating instruments, but we sit at that intersection where people need to really get that music is actually part of the healing process. And it's not just a nice thing to do, but it helps with pain management, lowering stress, lowering blood pressure, and all these great things. So we are in need of people that are willing to support us financially so that we can continue to do that and continue to help these thousands of people that we do. And then ultimately, as our program continues to grow after the pandemic, we're going to need more and more, volunteers to help us. So all of that can be found on musiciansoncall.org if you're looking to get more involved with us.
Is the website the best place to start too, if you are with a hospital or a facility that you think, hey, I would love to have Musicians on Call be a part of what we're doing and to start that conversation? Is that the best place for them to start as well?
Yeah, our website is really, it already is, but it's going to continue to be the starting place for anyone, whether you want to volunteer as a person, get involved as a hospital, get engaged as a donor, host an event for us. It all starts at our website, musiciansoncall.org. And so, that's where people should go. We've got all the information there, and it's pretty easy to navigate.
Wrap us up with maybe one of your, at least the top one that comes to mind in terms of stories of impact. So when you talk about the work you do and why it matters so much, and whether it's a testimonial from a patient or someone that has reached out with a really kind note or email, just sharing their story, what's kind of the first one that pops into your head in terms of the impact that you're able to make?
Well, during this pandemic, to connect so many artists with patients, and there was a patient out in LA who, due to an accident, was in a non-responsive situation where this young woman just was non-responsive, almost coma-like situation. And they tried everything and not a lot of things were working. And so finally a music therapist came in and said, have you ever thought about thought about music therapy. And the parents were like, gosh, nothing's really worked, so you might as well try. And so the caregiver said, well, what is an artist that she likes? And so the parent said, well, she's a big fan of Andrew McMahon and the Wilderness. And that was actually the first concert she went to, was this artist, Andrew McMahon. And her favorite song was a song of his called Cecilia and the Satellites. And anyway, the music therapist said, all right, well, let's start playing some of his music and see what happens. And so they started playing his music. And next thing you know, a tear comes out of this young girl's eye. And you can see that for the first time since this accident, she was having a physical reaction, and it was because of music. Now, fast forward to this summer, we were actually able to set up a Zoom where we had Andrew McMahon playing for this girl who literally, his music helped wake her up out of this comatose state. And she has got a long road ahead of her, but she's responsive now. And just to see her and her mom on a Zoom with Andrew McMahon as he sang that song to her, the one that, helped wake her up out of this moment, and all the tears that were coming out of happiness, really. You see moments like that and you say to yourself, we've got to make more of these things happen. And that's the magic that Musicians on Call helps facilitate between musicians and patients and hospitals. And that's why we have such this urgency to continue to do more of it. So I think there's a lot of sadness and stress that this pandemic has caused, but there's also a lot of beauty and hope and inspiration. And I think for me, that was one of them.
Absolutely. Well, you've mentioned it before, but say it again. Mention the website and where we go to get involved.
Yeah, head to www.musiciansoncall.org. We could certainly use your help, and just know that we're going to continue to use music as a tool to help people through this pandemic and beyond. And we appreciate all of your support. And honestly, Jeremy, we appreciate you as well for all you do to help shine a light on the good work we're doing.
Hey, we're honored to be a part of it. Well, Pete Griffin, President and CEO, Musicians on Call, thank you for all you and your team do. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you for being a part of the show.
Thanks so much for having me.